Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. We've made it.
Yeah.
Just 5 more minutes and we'll go ahead and kick things off.
Sure. Ali will be with us shortly. He is in communication, which is a good sign that he's close to being where he's meant to be.
Okay, good. How you doing? What time of day is it out there?
It's coming to 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay. So you're probably a little more bright-eyed and bushy-tailed than I am right now.
Yeah.
Despite a couple quarts of coffee, I'm still getting myself in shape.
I'm just getting a video call from Ali, so I'm just going to check to see what he's. Hello.
Oh, sweet.
There we go.
Great. Now, let me see.
Hello.
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 All right, here we are.
Yeah.
Thanks for warning me to be ready, G-Man. I hadn't. Suddenly, sort of saying Graham quite what I thought to be humorously arrogant. Oh, I'll be fine messages, and then had a bit of a panic.
Yeah, that's sort of how it goes.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me try. I'm playing with the views. For most of these sessions, there's just going to be one person talking, but with this one, because there's
we complicate things.
Yeah, but no, I think that works well if it switches back and forth. Okay, so I'm going to put everybody on speaker view, and yeah, we got 3 minutes to talk about whatever.
So this is like the green room. This is the lobby we're in.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Good.
I need my script, actually. I have some open again.
How much work has it been for you getting all this organized?
Oh, God. This is I know I try and make it look easy. That's a conscious effort.
Yeah.
For on the day, I don't want there to be any problems at all, but
yeah,
getting there requires 6 months at least of planning and trying to get things lined up. And like Bree said, I consider myself the official cat herd of the event. It's getting everybody trained and on the right page.
Yeah. I'm sure Graham sympathizes. I have no idea what that could possibly be like.
All right, so okay, there's my notes for. All right, I just need to say, right, I'm going to be doing tech support and moderating the chat. I wrote this script and distributed it to the other admins and had them be prepared to say it, but of course I haven't looked at it in about a month. So
now that I can sympathize with.
This is the wrong version of that document.
Oh, Graham, I just while we've got a moment writing Amber Haskett on this globe, and realized that I'd already written Amber Haskett across what I presume to be Hawaii.
Impressive organization again.
Yeah, I know. It's quite. I'm worried I've broken myself. I'm pretty annoyed I've got to give this away, to be honest. What are our volumes like? Am I okay for you guys?
Yeah, you sound fine to me.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
And just to be clear, I'm not recording anything. I'm just doing what I'm doing right now.
Correct.
Right. It's automatically recording actually, which is good to know.
For like people can have this as extra stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
It's
idea.
cold.
The idea is, we have so much going on at the same time. Some people can't make it exactly right now.
Yeah.
So they can watch it later. And then after 3 months, we start dumping it on YouTube, a session at a time as promo for next year. So
Cool. That sounds good.
All right. Well, that's good enough. Okay.
I'm excited.
All right. I'm going to get us started.
Okay.
All right. And give everybody a minute to join. All right, they're coming in.
Is this one of those things where I've got to press a funny button to be able to see everything? Or am I all right just seeing people?
You're fine just seeing people. Okay. Oh, if you hit the participants button at the bottom, you can see who's here.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's a chat thing, but I'm going to be
okay, yeah.
I'm going to be managing the chat.
I'm going to close that because that'll distract me and it'll intimidate me.
Cool. All right, I will get us started then. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our keynote with the wonderful folks behind Rex Factor. I'm going to be your admin today, and that just means that I'm going to be doing tech support behind the scenes, and I will be moderating the Q&A at the end. When we get, the format of this is going to be 20 minutes of content, give or take, and 20 minutes of Q&A. When we get to the Q&A portion, if you in the audience want to ask a question, there's 2 ways to do it. You can raise your hand, at which point, when it comes to the Q&A section, when it's your turn, I'll let you speak and you'll be able to verbally ask your question. The other thing you can do is just type it in the chat, whichever one you prefer. The raising hand speaking thing is new for us this year. We hope it works out. If you prefer tried and true technology, the chat is there for you. Just a reminder, no abusive behavior. We have a very strict policy on that. And with that, let me just turn it over to Graham and Ali, and I will turn off my camera and you guys can go.
Great.
All right.
Well, thank you very much, Ben. And hello, everyone. And thank you very much for joining us for our talk on deadly crossings that changed British history. For those of you who don't know, I'm Graham Duke.
I'm Ali Hood. Thank you.
I thought, will you know, just jump in and say your own name there? And I thought maybe I should give a prompt, but
thanks. No, this is different, isn't it? Because it's exactly the same. It's you and me, but there's just this other screen here.
Indeed, there are other people watching. For those of you who don't know, we are the presenters of the Rex Factor podcast, where we review the kings and queens of England and Scotland and score them on a number of different factors and then decide whether or not they have that certain something we call the Rex Factor. Today, however, we're not going to be reviewing anybody, but instead we are focusing on 2 crossings that had a major impact on the successions of England and Scotland, resulting in years of warfare and strife. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the White Ship disaster in England in 1120 and the fate of Margaret the Maid of Norway for Scotland in 1290.
Yeah, 2 famous instances of death by boat.
Indeed, but in different ways and with sort of similar but also slightly different circumstances and outcomes. So we'll look at both of those and see some of the similarities between the 2. Now, if this was a normal Rex Factor podcast, this would be the point at which Ali would dramatically do a title. So to give everyone a sense of what it looks like when that happens, Ali, do your title voice and say backgroundy stuff.
Okay. Now, I normally have quite a few runs at this. Okay. Backgroundy stuff.
There we go. You don't usually have to pinch your cheeks when you do it. That was an interesting innovation.
That's because I was trying not to smile, because if I smile too much, it would get in the way of what I sound like.
In the way of the drama. Yeah, so first of all, we're going to do what we call a bit of backgroundy stuff to understand the events preceding the two crossings. So we'll start off with England and the events preceding the White Ship disaster. At this point in the early 12th century, England is ruled by King Henry I. He's the youngest son of William the Conqueror, who also rules Normandy. However, Normandy at this point is under threat thanks to the King of France, Louis VI, supporting the rival claims of Henry's nephew, William Clito. But years of very careful diplomacy on Henry I's part, particularly then boosted by his victory in the Battle of Bremule in 1119, see Henry and Louis strike an advantageous peace, which includes Henry's son, William Adelin, paying homage to Louis, in return for which Louis recognizes William's rights in Normandy. So it's a great victory for the English. So Henry, his son, all the great nobles of the Anglo-Norman court are there waiting to go back to England, basically in triumph. Henry's at the peak of his powers. He's secured Normandy for himself, secured the succession for his son. Everything's looking peachy.
All right, happy days. And now they've just got to get home.
Now they've just got to get home, and presuming it's an uneventful voyage, all will be well.
Yeah, P&O. Why isn't there? Because spoiler alert, they don't.
Something goes wrong, yes.
Yeah. Why isn't there a better system? Like, because they go for like getting across the channel. Yeah.
Better system than what? Than boats? Or they hadn't quite.
I don't know. I feel like them. Yeah. I don't know what I mean by that. I think of like a regular. Why isn't there like a regular, like, crossing? I suppose there is. And that's what this is. It's just a load of fishermen. The thing is, I can't imagine anything between P&O ferry with 500 cars on and hitching a lift with a fisherman. And I just can't picture the bit in the middle, what this is.
Well, that's the sweet spot where we are at the moment, really. Well, we'll come back to sea. In its own way. We'll come back to the non-P&O, non-bloke in his fishing boat a little bit. First of all, we'll go to Scotland, where the situation was very, very different. Scotland had enjoyed a period of great strength and stability under King Alexander III. He'd been king since 1249, when he was just 7 years old, but he'd ruled very well and very successfully. He secured the Western Isles from Norway and had a very stable and successful rule in Scotland. But unfortunately, a series of family tragedies meant that his only surviving descendant was his one-year-old granddaughter, Margaret the Maid of Norway, who was the daughter of his daughter and her husband, King Eric II of Norway. So Alexander has his nobles swear an oath of loyalty to the absent baby, because Margaret is in Norway at this point. But Alexander also remarries in the hope of securing a new son and heir. But unfortunately, in March 1286, Alexander rather unwisely rode through the night to pay his new wife a booty call, fell from his horse and died.
Was he? I remember him for that, but he wasn't the mass murderer as well, was he?
No, I mean, quite a lot of the Scottish kings were mass murderers. I think you're thinking Malcolm II, that was the particular serial killer, though.
Baby smasher.
No, so that was this Alexander's father, Alexander II, who wiped out a rival dynastic line, which did end with smashing a baby. It was quite brutal and unpleasant. This chap is rather more fun and
good,
enjoyable. But
Eric II.
Oh yes, of Norway.
He blood axe or later? Much
later. Blood axe is sort of when it was Viking times and Saxons.
Okay, still cool name.
Indeed. So Alexander has died. Technically, Margaret, who is still only 3 years old at this point, has become Scotland's first ever queen regnant. But it is. The Norse don't want to send Margaret to Scotland at this point because you've got the Balliol and Bruce families who feel like they've got a good claim to the succession. They're not really interested in a 3-year-old Norwegian girl. So they are preparing basically to do battle to see which one of them is going to become queen. So a combination of nobles and bishops combine together to form a regency government, and they become known as the very cool Guardians of Scotland.
That is cool.
And what they're going to do is restore order, keep the Balliols and Bruces in check, and they then ask for external help in the form of King Edward I of England.
And it's a reasonable ask. He's known for his fair-handedness.
He is at this point known for his fair-handedness. He was also the brother-in-law of Alexander III. Alexander married Edward's sister, and he's a respected Crusader king and a European diplomat. So he seems like a very fair and neutral person to come in and help them out. So Edward indeed guarantees to protect Margaret's accession and secured the betrothal of her to his son and heir, the future Edward II, which, if it had gone ahead, would have achieved the union of the crown some 300 odd years before James VI of Scotland, the first of England.
Imagine all the blood that could have been saved if we'd have just sorted that out a bit earlier.
Well, indeed, he was sorting it out. All that remained, of course, is for Margaret now to come from Norway to Scotland and be crowned Queen of Scots.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small ask. Did she go P&O or fishing boat?
I guess it's closer to fishing boat.
Yeah, that's the trouble.
Well, indeed, let's find out what sort of nautical service both of our royal prince and princesses got. And this is where Ali would dramatically say, crossings.
Crossings!
So 1120, England in a period of triumph, future apparently secure, while Scotland in 1290, very precariously placed with significant internal tensions. So for England, it's a case of the returning heroes coming back home. In Scotland, you've got the future really resting on the shoulders of a 7-year-old girl who's never actually been to Scotland before.
Yeah, really, really Dutch then. No, well, she's not Dutch. What is she?
More Norwegian.
Norwegian. Okay, but not at all Scottish. She's as Scottish as she is Dutch.
Well, in the sense that her mother is the Princess of Scotland and her grandfather was the King of Scotland. I think probably the Dutch not really heavily involved.
She's not Scottish.
Well,
I mean, she is Scottish. It's tricky. I can see the problem here.
Well, let's go to England where the situation's a little bit clearer. Okay, you're right with that.
Oh, I thought I had to say England.
Oh, no. Sorry, you just
okay.
sort of looked like thought I'd upset you. You wanted more of Scotland. I really want to nail this down. Where is she from?
Well, yeah, I did have a quiet moment to work out exactly what the hell I was trying to work out. But yeah.
So back in England, or rather back in Normandy, at Barfleur, indeed, on the coast, we've got Henry I, his son, William Adelin, and many of the Anglo-Norman court waiting to return to England in triumph. Henry is approached by a chap called Thomas Fitzstephen, who's the captain of a vessel called the White Ship. And Thomas Fitzstephen's father had been the one to captain the ship that took William the Conqueror to England as part of his invasion in 1066. So he wants to rather return the favour, and he offers up the White Ship to Henry. To take
some 80 years later. So it's like someone saying now that, oh, my grandfather was a Dunkirk little ship person. I'd like the honour of doing it the other way.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. You can see how it'd still be relevant.
Yeah. And it's got a reputation as a very fast ship as well, so it's a good ship to have. Henry has already got a ship fitted out for him, so he turns it down. But William Adelin, along with his two of his illegitimate half-siblings and various other young nobles, do take up the offer. So Henry's ship leaves first, whilst William Adelin and his friends continue drinking and celebrating their good fortune well into the night. So once they do eventually set off, Adelin and his companions urge the captain to show just how fast the White Ship can go, and they're determined to actually catch up with and overtake Henry I and get back to England before his father. Rather an ill-advised request, given that the crew is basically drunk, and it's also late night in November, which is not ideal conditions for this sort of thing. But nevertheless, presumably eager to please the future king, the captain did as instructed, and they try to race off. They don't get very far, however, because they hit a submerged rock known as a quay boeuf, and as a result, very quickly sink.
And presumably very cold water.
Very cold water with a lot of people who can't swim, which is not ideal. Now, William Adelin is lucky, however, because his attendants quickly pack him onto a small boat and start to row him to shore and to safety. But William hears his half-sister calling for him, so he orders them to turn back and go to the White Ship to rescue his sister.
You're quite right.
Unfortunately, the mass of people who have jumped off or have fallen off the ship all converge on this one boat. It's the only one that there is.
Oh, God.
Quickly, it gets overwhelmed, capsized, everyone falls in, and as William of Malmesbury recorded, by the multitude that leapt into her, capsized and sank and buried all indiscriminately in the deep.
What a grotesque frenzy.
So William Adelan, all the other noble passengers on board, all the household
Who is
staff,
this
etc.,
Adelan
drown.
fellow
He's the
you're talking about?
eldest son and heir of Henry I. So he is meant to
He
be
is
the
the
next
fellow.
king. He is the man. Yeah, he's the man
Oh,
making that
right.
crossing. And he is dead, as are his half siblings and all the other noble passengers on board. The only survivor was a butcher from Rouen who was only on board because he'd come to collect a debt.
They just left, and he was like, "Hang on,
Yeah.
I'm going to get back."
Yeah.
Ah. And he
So he-
became Archbishop of Canterbury.
Well, you can imagine. But he's the only reason we have any kind of first-hand account, because he's the one survivor.
And it was just that close to land that he could get there and not die of shock.
He clung on to some wreckage and was able to stay clinging on until help arrives. So very tragic, and that is the death of William Adelan. The experience of Margaret, the Maid of Norway, was rather less raucous. Her father returned a lavishly provisioned ship that had been sent by Edward because Eric was campaigning at the time and didn't want his daughter just to leave while he was gone. So Eric instead returns and entrusts the task of taking her to Scotland to Bishop Narv of Bergen. So Margaret finally sets off with the bishop in September, accompanied by 2 Scottish knights and a Norse nobleman and his wife, who was probably attending on Margaret. And meanwhile, all the great and the good of Scotland are gathering at Scone for her coronation ceremony.
Yeah.
Now, frustratingly, we do not have a butcher from Rouen on board to let us know what the journey was like. But it doesn't suffer any of the problems of the White Ship. No capsizing, no hitting of rocks, all very plain sailing. But unfortunately, Margaret falls ill during the voyage. So they landed at Orkney on the 23rd of September to give her a chance to recover. But sadly, she did not recover. And whether from food poisoning or seasickness, which is often stated but seems a bit unlikely, Margaret dies about 6 days later in the arms of Bishop Narv, still only 7 years old.
Oh, what a little chicken.
Now, Orkney at this point is actually part of Norse territory still. So Norway actually rules Orkney and the Shetlands. So technically, Margaret doesn't actually even make it to Scotland.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't.
Mm.
That's why we called that death by boat, rather than
Yes.
it being a regular drowning or anything. It's
Yeah, so they don't crash. Nothing goes wrong with the actual voyage itself. It's just that the one person that you wanted to make it safely across doesn't.
Oh, tragedy. Tragic, rather.
Yes, 2 tragic situations, and both of them have a pretty big impact on the histories of England and Scotland. So, Ali, dramatic voice, impact.
Impact!
So while the nature of the 2 crossings were very different, the outcomes are very similar. In both cases, the future monarch, or rather more imminently, obviously in Margaret's case, had died en route to their kingdom. And in both cases, this will unleash chaos and division, though again, circumstances by which it does this are rather different. So in England, Henry I understandably devastated when he finally received the news of William's death. I say finally because apparently he had quite a temper on him, and the nobles and bishops were a bit scared to actually tell him. So eventually they just sent a small boy to go and break the news to him, hoping that he wouldn't take it out on the small boy, which he doesn't.
Yeah, but that's illustrative, isn't it? Of that little boy's bravery over there.
Indeed. Now, the problem is, beyond the personal grief, although Henry holds the record in England for acknowledged illegitimate children, which is over 20 to his name,
Crikey.
William was his only legitimate son, and this now throws the succession back into uncertainty. So he just basically defeated his nephew, William Clito. Suddenly, Clito smelling victory again. However, Henry does still have one legitimate child in the form of his daughter, the Empress Matilda. And just as Alexander III would do in Scotland, he brings all of the nobles and bishops together and has them swear public oaths at various times, acknowledging Matilda as his legal heir.
Yeah, okay. And what's Clito doing at this time?
He's still campaigning a bit against Henry. He eventually does actually come a cropper before Henry I.
Oh, fine. Right, nice. Yeah.
Well, exactly. You would have thought fine. You thought, well, everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong. But nevertheless, it's stable. Matilda's acknowledged as the heir, so hopefully that's going to be fine. it's when Henry dies in 1135 that you really see the true impact of the White Ship. Matilda at this point was pregnant with her third son in Normandy, and she wasn't able to respond as swiftly as she might have done otherwise, and particularly because she'd become a bit estranged from her father in recent years over disputes between Henry and her husband. So instead, the person who is able to act swiftly is her cousin, Stephen of Blois. He rushes back to England and has himself crowned king, resulting in a brutal civil war that lasted nearly 20 years and is popularly known as the Anarchy.
Where was Matilda, did you say?
She was in Normandy initially,
Oh, right. Yeah.
But not with the king, so she's not with him when he dies. We see sort of there's a point where it looks like Matilda was going to have herself crowned, but ultimately it descends into a stalemate with Matilda and Stephen controlling different parts of the country, and central royal control of the country just evaporates in this period, and you have various powerful nobles ruling territories as sort of virtual fiefdoms.
Chaos, anarchy, if you will.
Anarchy, indeed, anarchy in the UK. Whilst in England, the nobles agreed to a female heir, but divided once the king died. In Scotland, they actually turned to a female heir for fear of the divisions that they would otherwise have had. So Margaret's death undoes that. We see a return to the threat of war between the Balliol and the Bruce factions. So once again, Guardians of Scotland get together and call on Edward I to help sort out who should be the next ruler of Scotland. And after 2 years' deliberation, Edward determines that John Balliol is the one with the best claim by primogeniture.
And he's just he can just he's the arbiter in this. He can decide what the answer is.
Oh, he is, and there's also a whole court. It's quite a big occasion. It's not just on a whim.
Okay, and the answer is you. It's like X Factor.
Indeed, and it's a fair decision in many ways, but he's not a neutral observer, and he manipulates the situation so that Balliol and other nobles have to acknowledge him as overlord.
Right. Okay. Acknowledge. Okay, so he's setting him up as his little puppet fella in Scotland. So you have to. I'll back you, but you know, I'm the daddy.
Yeah. Sorry, just coughing. Yeah, so Balliol has various impositions.
We'll cut this out, don't worry.
Yeah, we'll cut this from the live chat.
Yeah.
Various impositions until eventually he cracks. So Edward invades and conquers Scotland in 1296, forcing Balliol to abdicate. Resistance continues for a bit, but ultimately Wallace, William Wallace, the famous rebel, is executed. Edward secures homage, and everything seems fine for Edward.
Yeah, well, don't carry on. Everything's fine. Edward's great.
Indeed, except that ultimately both countries are able to restore order. Matilda never gets the crown back from Stephen, but Stephen himself also isn't able to establish primacy. And Matilda's son, future Henry II, has Normandy, Anjou, and by marriage Aquitaine. He's clearly the most powerful person in the next generation. And there's a sense that people don't want any more war. And so Stephen ultimately agrees to acknowledge Henry, Matilda's son, as his heir. So instead, Stephen dies, and in 1154, Henry II becomes king and rules a vast empire, the left of France, and he wins the first series of Rex Factor.
Boom, boom, boom. How are we doing timing-wise?
Well, we're nearly done.
All right, good.
Or rather, nearly done with the talk. We'll open up to questions soon.
I'm thinking about your voice. Do you need a
I know. I've just got enough time for another paragraph, and then I'll I'll switch to water. In Scotland, Edward I's conquest is undone in 1306 when Robert the Bruce has himself crowned king. Initially falls into exile, but he returns in 1307. Edward dies en route, land rather than sea, to Scotland. And over the next 20 years, Bruce gradually takes back more and more of Scotland with famous victories such as the Battle of Bannockburn, until in 1328, a year before he died, England finally acknowledged Robert the Bruce as king and Scottish independence. And what's more, Robert's efforts will see him win the second series of Rex Factor.
Yeah.
So if you want to have ensure that your country has a great monarch, the best thing to do is stick a stickly prince or princess onto a dodgy boat, and ultimately success will follow.
Yeah, 100% success rate.
Indeed. So apologies that my cough has just descended on me, so I'm now going to drink a gallon of water.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for listening. And if anyone's got any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
We've already got one in the Q&A button. I would like to apologize to everybody if there's any confusion going forward. We meant to remove the Q&A button so that it was just the two methods of asking questions. But in any case, if you have any questions now, please put them in the chat or raise your hand. Okay, but the one question we got, James asked, I heard that everyone on the white ship was also incredibly drunk. Is that true?
That is thought to be the case, yeah. There certainly accounts are given that basically Adeline and his mates all just drinking, probably before they even get on the ship. They're all completely roaring drunk, and probably the crew of the ship as well. So yes, not really many people thinking straight, and sadly that would have included the helmsman who was responsible for steering the ship, hence steering it into a rock.
Or not, as the case may be.
Is it still there, that rock?
Yeah.
Rex Factor trip.
Quite sturdy things.
Yeah, they are, aren't they?
Rocks.
It's like that what's it called? That big rock in the center of Australia. Is that still there? I saw that.
I think it may still be there.
All right. Bill asked Scott's disposition currently, and I'm not sure what that means.
Well, because there's going to be a new independence. Well, what's it? Nicola Sturgeon has pushed for another independence vote. So I think he's saying that they should get a sickly princess on a boat stat.
I think that's
see what happens.
Yeah. It's the only way to go forward as a country. Okay, Sydney asked, can you give a rough idea of how big the white ship itself was? Like how many people it held? Sorry if you mentioned it and I missed it.
Oh, no, I didn't mention that. I'm not sure what its crew was. That's a question we might be able to answer better in future, hopefully, because we did an interview with Charles Spencer, who wrote a book recently on the white ship. And he was part of a group that was looking to see if they could find the white ship, which I say Ali and I both said, we didn't even contemplate that could even be possible. But they have found a ship in about that position. Looks like it's of about that age. I don't know how long it's going to take them to do all the tests and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And whether they will be able to 100% confirm whether or not it is.
That's right.
The white ship.
When we did that interview, both the papers and I were very keen to get him to say it's definitely the white ship, because that would be the best headline. And he spent the whole time saying it's not definitely the white ship, but it is very interesting. But
if that is the white ship, they are able to confirm that, or at least within reasonable doubt confirm it, then hopefully that might allow us to actually have some kind of, sort of reconstruction based on actually being able to see it.
I'm guessing it would look an awful lot like the ones in the Bayeux Tapestry, because we're only talking about 100 years of development.
Yeah.
So Sarah asked, in not these words exactly, but why is it called the white ship?
I assume it was painted white.
I'm with you, Sarah. I'm with you. It didn't strike me first time.
Okay. Roberto asked, what does the discovery of the Gloucester mean for British history in general?
Oh, so this is an interesting one. So this is another shipwreck which has recently been discovered. So this was a ship that the future James II was on, and also actually the future the current John Churchill, the future Duke of Marlborough. So they were just off the coast, and the ship sank. I think James only just got off at the last minute before it actually went down. There were rumours that he'd sort of probably anti-Catholic rumours, because he was a Catholic king, that he'd made more effort to secure the safety of his dogs rather than some of the actual sailors on board. But that probably is just propaganda against him. I think it's a very significant a significant find. It's probably in British water. Well, it's not. I don't know if it is quite in British waters. It might be slightly into international waters. But in terms of British ships, perhaps the most significant confirmed finding around the island, at least since the Mary Rose. I'm not sure quite what exactly condition that it's in. But yeah, I'm not sure otherwise what we'll learn, how much is on there in terms of treasures and artifacts and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to get some of that. I think there's going to be an exhibition. I think it's going to be at Norwich Castle next year. I think I remember reading in 2023. So I think we'll get a really good sense next year of exactly what they found and what we can learn from that.
Rex trick.
Cool. So much interesting stuff is happening in aquatic, or I forget what the technical term is, but underwater archaeology.
Yeah.
So much cool stuff happening now.
Yeah, because they had the Endurance found as well recently.
Yeah.
And a US warship in the Pacific that what state was it? I can't remember which state it was, and it'd gone down firing flares and everything just because it had no ammunition left. But it's so deep, they've only just discovered it using all the tech that we can now.
Cool.
Amazing. I mean, once again, managed to get this onto the Second World War somehow.
I'm turning my camera up because my naked daughter just walked into the room. Diogenes the Cynic asked, what is the best book to read for this topic? And I will be right back.
Well, I would recommend Charles Spencer's book, The White Ship. I don't know what's the full title of it. It's on the bookshelf, but I don't want to go and get it and leave Ali in the completely opposite zone of the room.
That's right. I checked my Kindle yesterday. I recharged it, and it definitely. I found the copy that I was concerned that I had read, and it is his book. Sorry, that is because I'd read a book that he'd already written. Yeah.
So the full title is The White Ship: Conquest, Anarchy, and the Wrecking of Henry I's Dream. What Ali was referring to is the fact that Ali, in our interview, very nearly recommended Charles Spencer that he read what actually transpired to be a book he himself had written. Charles I.
Yeah, that would have been up there with my worst faux pas, I reckon.
It's a compliment, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so.
It'd been worse if you told him to avoid it.
Yeah. Not impossible.
So Benjamin Clark commented, white is a color sometimes associated with death and mourning, so maybe it's that in terms of the white ship. So maybe it was a post hoc label.
Or a warning that maybe they shouldn't have got on board.
Which ship should we take? I think the death ship. Let's take that.
Yeah.
Safe. I'm having no end of excitement down here. Okay. Next up, hold on.
We can cover. What are you up to today, G-Man?
Well, we're doing another talk.
Yeah. What time's that? 7.
That's 7:30 our time, I think.
And that's with Rob.
2:30 EST time. Yes, that's with Pontifex and Totalis Rankium, a Rexipods chat.
Cool. Yeah, with Rob. And what are we doing on that?
We're just having a chat.
Okay. I don't need to prepare anything.
You, as ever.
Okay, I'll be fine. I will be
Nothing
fine.
to prepare.
We should have a background like Ben here. I quite like the idea of a
We could get your own. You can do your own in Zoom, couldn't you?
Oh yeah. Oh man, actually, yeah, that's a good point.
I'm just having a little look in the chat to see if there are any other questions. Dirk Kaufman Becky said, why did the White Ship delay its departure and let Henry go first? Had they missed the tide? I think it was just that they just carried on drinking, that Henry left, and presumably other ships. I don't think it was just 2 ships. So Henry left on time, and Adelaine and co stayed later and didn't leave on time. So I don't think it was a thing like they'd missed the tide or anything planned. I think it was just because they were having fun, and then eventually they rocked up and off they went.
Thank you for doing that one. Apologies.
Okay.
So Eric asked, wasn't Stephen a third child? How were his two brothers skipped over for the succession?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, one aspect is simply that that Stephen just got to England first and had himself crowned, because actually none of the Norman monarchs were kind of the legitimate king in a way, or successor. So William the Conqueror, obviously, he was conquest by battle. William Rufus was actually the second son rather than Robert, who was the first son. And likewise, Henry was the third son. So when William Rufus died, the older brother Robert was still alive. So Stephen was in many ways just continuing a good family tradition of stealing the throne that wasn't yours. I think the other issue is that one of the brothers, I think the oldest brother, it's not known exactly such a long time ago, but it's sort of thought that he might have had mental health issues or mental capacity issues because he didn't really succeed to any of his lordships. The second brother, I think, Theobald, he was a more surprising one. I think he was actually in the process of discussing with some nobles who were saying, "Oh, we think you're the great man. Maybe you should be the king." And he was sort of having some discussions about that. And then the news came that his younger brother had just gone and had himself crowned anyway. So that was it, really. I think, particularly at that point, the act of being anointed with holy oil and crowned king was very important. So once that had happened, they couldn't just say, no, that doesn't count. You're not meant to be king. It had happened then. That was genuinely seen as divinely ordained as king. So once Stephen got there first, and crucially his bishop, another brother was the Archbishop of Winchester and was one of the most senior prelates of the country. So he kind of got enough people on board to get that officially done quickly.
What was the relationship between Stephen and Theobald afterwards? Did Theobald side with him in the anarchy or with Matilda?
He sided with him. I'm not sure if he got massively involved. So I mean, he would have been. I can't remember when he died. Actually, Theobald. It'd be, yeah. I mean, I imagine a little bit of tension. Bit of tension if your older brother takes a potential, windfall of being king of England from you.
I mean, maybe just wasn't into it. I mean, it's not for me. If you're offering, it's not too much pressure. What are the hours?
Indeed, not great.
Okay, Christopher asked, do you think the fact that Matilda was married to Geoffrey of Anjou, whom the English Normans really didn't like, had any influence on Stephen being accepted as king instead of Matilda?
Yeah, I think it definitely did, because the marriage itself was unpopular from the start, not least with Matilda, because she had previously been married to the Holy Roman Emperor. So then to have to marry, he wasn't even initially count. They sort of had to do a deal whereby his father, who was the Count of Anjou, went off to be king of Jerusalem so that his son could be at least of that status when he married Matilda. And he's a good 10 years or so younger than her as well. He's sort of not much more than a teenager, really, or he's a teenager. So she wasn't very happy about it. And a lot of people at the Anglo-Norman court are unhappy about it because they don't really like Anjou all that much. So it sets her up for a bit of a loss, really. And then particularly Henry doesn't really want to give them the castles that they maybe should have been due, and he doesn't want to give away any of his own power. So he wants her to, and his line, to continue him, but he doesn't want to give anything away whilst he's king. So he doesn't arguably do enough to really get set with her. And indeed, he was kind of in conflict with her husband, Geoffrey, and Matilda at that point does take her husband's side. So that's kind of why when Henry dies, and it was a surprise when he died, a Surfeit of Lamprey apparently did for Henry I. So no one was ready for it. And as I said, Matilda was pregnant as well. So I think that she wasn't at court as much as she would have been. She'd grown up outside of England anyway, so she wasn't really established. Whereas Stephen was a very popular figure. He was a respected, likable, good soldier. So he was a more amenable person, I think, for a lot of people initially.
But what was his? Why did everyone hate Geoffrey? Why did everyone hate Anjou?
Well, I guess you've got to remember that a lot of these nobles, it's not just England, it's their Anglo-Norman. So Normandy, Anjou have got their own sort of rivalries going on. And then there's all sorts of politics that happens and diplomacy.
Okay, so it's just a different team. It's not like it's bit French and the wrong type of French. And also there's a sense that, we've not had a queen regnant before in England. Regnant meaning ruling like a king rather than a consort. So there's a sense that the guy that Matilda marries will perhaps be seen as effectively king. Yeah.
So it's not just that she's married this guy, it's that he's going to be the senior man in the kingdom.
Yeah. And Stephen looks exactly right and is just legitimate enough. They've done it, I feel, an oath of loyalty to her, but in every other way, she's wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I sense
Except
trouble.
that she did have sons. So the Henry II was born and doted on by Henry I. So there was a sense that that was the rightful succession. That was the path they needed to get to, but it was the bit in the middle that was problematic.
So we are actually out of time. Sorry to cut this short. There was one more question, but I will say if you guys are amenable, or if people in the chat want to keep the conversation going, if everybody can move over to the open chat meeting that's going on in the outside area, that you can continue the conversation there. But for now, I need to thank everybody for coming, and Graham and Ali for this wonderful presentation. And thank you all so much. And it's unfortunately, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.